I pulled into my driveway after 3 weeks away, my truck loaded with boxes of my mother's belongings. The 17-hour drive from Vancouver back to Calgary had given me plenty of time to think about her final days,
what we learned from that experience was invaluable, and it changed everything about how we approached our goals from that moment on.
I'd now buried both my parents and my wife. The house before me suddenly felt emptier than ever. But something was wrong. The front porch light was on, even though I'd set it on a timer before leaving. My daughter Jennifer's car was parked in my usual spot, and when I climbed the steps, exhausted and grief-worn, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The lock on my front door was different, shiny, new. I pulled out my key ring and tried my key. It didn't fit. I tried again, thinking maybe exhaustion was making my hand shake. Nothing. I checked the keychain to make sure I hadn't grabbed the wrong key somehow. No, this was definitely my house key, the key I'd used for 28 years. The key that opened the house I'd bought with my late wife Sarah when Jennifer was barely 2 years old. I was standing there, confused and increasingly worried, when the door swung open. But it wasn't Jennifer standing there. It was her fiancé, Blake Carter, 31 years old, always in expensive athleisure wear, always talking about his tech ventures and disrupting industries. I'd met him 4 times since Jennifer introduced him 6 months ago. Each time left me with a tighter knot in my stomach that I couldn't quite explain to my daughter. "Richard," he said. Not Richard with any warmth, but the way you might acknowledge someone standing on your porch. "We weren't expecting you back until next week." I stared at him. "What are you doing in my house? And why doesn't my key work?" Blake leaned against the doorframe like he owned the place. "Oh yeah, about that. I upgraded your locks. The old ones were pretty dated, honestly. Real security risk. I've got the new keys inside." He said it so casually, like he'd done me a favor. "You changed the locks on my house?" I could hear my voice rising. "While I was at my mother's deathbed? Jenny said you'd be gone for at least another week or 2. We thought we'd stay here and look after the place. You know, make sure nobody broke in, keep up with the yard work, that sort of thing." He glanced over his shoulder. "Babe, your dad's here." I heard footsteps, and then Jennifer appeared behind Blake. My daughter, 29 years old, with her mother's kind eyes, and that same way of tucking her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. She was doing it now. "Dad, oh my God, I'm so sorry about Grandma." She pushed past Blake to hug me, and I held her tight. For a moment, everything else faded. This was my little girl, the one I'd raised alone for the past 2 years since Sarah died. The one whose university graduation I'd applauded even while my wife's empty chair beside me felt like a canyon. "I didn't think you'd be back so soon," she said, pulling away. Blake thought it would be good to stay here while you were gone, and..." "It's fine," I said, though it wasn't. "Can I come inside?" "My house?" Blake stepped aside with an exaggerated sweep of his arm. "Of course, man. Mi casa es su casa." He actually laughed at his own joke. I walked through my front door and stopped. The living room had been rearranged. My recliner, the one Sarah and I had bought together 15 years ago, was gone. In its place was a modern gray sectional I'd never seen before. The family photos on the mantel had been replaced with abstract art pieces. The throw blanket Sarah had crocheted during her first round of chemo
and that's when I realized the true meaning of resilience.
"What happened to my furniture?"
In the face of the impossible.
Jennifer bit her lip.
None.
"We thought it could use a refresh." "Your recliner was really worn out, Dad. We moved it to the garage." And Blake brought over his couch. "Isn't it nice? I didn't ask you to move my things." I walked further into the house, my chest tightening with each step. In the kitchen, expensive copper pots hung from a new rack. The old coffee maker Sarah and I had received as a wedding gift was gone, replaced by some chrome espresso machine. But it was when I looked out the kitchen window that my heart actually stopped. Sarah's greenhouse was gone, where my late wife had spent countless hours nurturing her orchids and tomatoes, where she'd found peace during her illness, where I'd continued her work every single morning since her death. There was nothing but a concrete slab. A concrete slab with workout equipment on it. "What?" I said very quietly. "Happened to the greenhouse?" Blake walked into the kitchen, protein shake in hand. "Oh yeah, I meant to tell you about that. That old shed thing was falling apart, man. Real eyesore. And you weren't using it. So I had it torn down. Built you a proper outdoor gym instead. Cost me $3,000? You're welcome. I turned to look at him. You tore down my wife's greenhouse. It was like half-rotted wood and cracked glass, Blake said, completely missing the edge in my voice. This is way better. I've got a squat rack, bench press, full set of weights. You should use it, actually. Get in shape. No offense, but you could use it. I walked to the back door and outside. My legs felt like they weren't quite connected to my body. The greenhouse. Sarah's greenhouse. The one I'd helped her build 12 years ago. The one where she'd taught Jennifer how to transplant seedlings. The one where I'd scattered some of her ashes, mixed into the soil beneath her favorite rose bush. Gone. The rose bush was gone too, ripped out. In its place was rubber flooring and a weight bench. Dad. Jennifer had followed me outside. I told Blake maybe we should ask first, but he said it was a surprise, and you were dealing with Grandma. And how long have you been staying here? I asked, not looking at her. About a week and a half. We were going to tell you, but then we heard about Grandma getting worse, and we didn't want to bother you with, where's the greenhouse wood? The plants? Blake had everything hauled away, Jennifer said softly. I saved some of the tools. They're in the garage. I turned to face her. You let him destroy your mother's greenhouse. Tears started in her eyes. I didn't know he was going to tear the whole thing down. I thought he was just going to clean it up a bit. By the time I realized what he was doing, it was already gone. I'm so sorry, Dad. Blake joined us on the patio, apparently oblivious to the tension. Look, I get it. You're attached to old stuff. But trust me, this is an upgrade. That greenhouse thing wasn't exactly adding property value. This gym setup, though, a totally different story. I've already had 3 neighbors ask about it. Something in me snapped. Get out. Blake laughed. What? Get out of my house. Now. He stopped laughing. Whoa, okay. Look, I know you're upset. You've had a rough few weeks. Let's all just take a breath and... This is my house, I said, my voice shaking now. My house that you broke into, changed the locks on, and destroyed my wife's memorial garden. Get out. Dad, Jennifer started. Actually, Blake said, his whole demeanor changing. Legally speaking, we've been living here for almost 2 weeks. And Jenny's your daughter. She has a right to be here.
The most important lesson I learned was to
That gives
embrace
me
the
a right
journey,
to be here
not
too.
just the destination.
Like hell it does.
It's in the
Check
struggle
the law,
where true
Richard.
growth occurs.
Squatters' rights. We've established residency. You can't just kick us out. I stared at him. Are you seriously claiming squatters' rights on my house? The house I've owned for 28 years? The house I'm still making mortgage payments on? Blake shrugged. I'm just saying, legally, it's complicated. And Jenny's on the deed, right? No, I said. She's not. That seemed to surprise him. He glanced at Jennifer, then back at me. Well, either way, we have tenant rights now. You'd have to formally evict us, which takes months in Alberta. So maybe we should all just calm down and figure this out like adults. He said it so confidently, so smugly, like he'd actually researched this, like he'd planned it. That's when I understood. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't Blake being thoughtless. He'd seen an opportunity. A widower going to care for his dying mother. An empty house. A girlfriend who loved her father but might be manipulated. This was calculated. Jennifer, I said. Did you know he was planning this? Planning what? Dad, no. We just came to water your plants and check on things. Blake thought it would be easier to stay here than drive back and forth every day. And the locks? She hesitated. He said the old ones were easy to pick, that someone could break in while the house was empty. And my furniture? My things? He said he was just redecorating a bit, making it nicer for when you got back. And your mother's greenhouse? She didn't answer that, just looked at her feet. Blake put his arm around Jennifer. Look, we can talk about the greenhouse. Maybe we overstepped, but the locks were a genuine security concern. And you have to admit, the living room looks way better now. We were doing you a favor. No, I said. You were moving in. You were taking over my house. That's a bit dramatic, don't you think? I looked at my daughter, Jenny. I need you to really hear me right now. I just buried my mother 3 days ago. Before that, I held her hand while she died, the same way I held your mother's hand 2 years ago. I drove 17 hours straight to get home, and I came home to find my locks changed, my dead wife's memorial destroyed, and some guy I barely know telling me I can't kick him out of my own house. I need you to understand how serious this is. Jennifer was crying now. I know. I'm so sorry. We'll fix it. We'll move out right now. No, Blake said. She turned to him. What? I said no. We're not going anywhere. He looked at me. You want us gone? Go ahead and call the cops. Let's see what they say about your squatter theory. Or better yet, call a lawyer. While you're dealing with legal bills and eviction proceedings, Jenny and I will be right here, comfortable and rent-free. Blake, stop it, Jennifer said. This is my dad's house. It's just a house, babe. A house he's barely living in anymore since your mom died. Look at him. He can barely maintain this place. We're doing him a favor. That did it. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. What are you doing? Blake asked, his confidence wavering for the first time. I'm calling the police to report a break-in and property destruction. You can't, we didn't break in. Jenny has a key. Had a key. You changed the locks,
The
remember?
journey we took wasn't just physical.
I kept my eyes on
it was
him
a
as the
testament to
dispatcher
the resilience of the human
Yes.
spirit.
Hello.
I've never experienced
I'd like to
anything
report a
quite like
break-in
it.
at my residence. 2 individuals changed my locks while I was out of province and destroyed property. Yes, they're still here. No, I don't feel safe. One of them is claiming he won't leave. Blake's face had gone pale. Jenny, tell him to hang up. But Jennifer was staring at Blake like she'd never seen him before. You said we'd leave if he wanted us to. You said we were just helping. I also said a lot of things to get you in bed, babe. Grow up. The look on my daughter's face in that moment was something I'll never forget. It was like watching her heart break in real time. Officers are on their way, I said, ending the call. I'd suggest you start packing. Blake's cocky demeanor had completely evaporated. Look, I may have gotten a bit ahead of myself. Let's just talk about this. Man to man. There's nothing to talk about. You tore down my wife's greenhouse. You destroyed the place where I spread her ashes. You tried to steal my house. We're way past talking. Dad, Jennifer said quietly, I didn't know about the ashes. I swear. He told me the greenhouse was full of dead plants and broken glass. I didn't know Mom's ashes were. Her voice broke. I wanted to comfort her. But I was so angry and hurt and exhausted that I couldn't move. The police arrived 12 minutes later. 2 officers, a man and a woman, both looking tired at the end of their shift. I met them at the door and explained the situation. Blake tried to argue about tenant rights, but the female officer cut him off. Did you have a lease agreement with the homeowner? Well, no, but did the homeowner give you permission to be here? His daughter? I'm asking about the homeowner. Sir? She turned to me. Did you give this man permission to be in your house? No. I was in Vancouver, caring for my dying mother. I came home to find my locks changed and my property destroyed. The officer nodded. That's criminal mischief and possibly breaking and entering. We'll need you to come down to the station, she told Blake. This is bullshit, Blake exploded. Jenny, tell them. Jennifer looked at him with red eyes. You told me we'd leave if he asked. You lied to me. About everything. Don't be stupid. We had a good thing here. The male officer stepped between them. Sir, you need to calm down and come with us. As they led Blake out in handcuffs, he shouted back at me, I'll sue you for this. False arrest. I'll own this house. The female officer stayed behind to take my statement. She was sympathetic but honest. This is going to be messy. He'll probably be released tonight. You should change the locks again, like immediately, and document everything he destroyed. Take photos. Get estimates for repairs. File a restraining order tomorrow. After she left, Jennifer and I stood in my kitchen, the silence heavy between us. I didn't know, she finally said. I really didn't know what he was planning. How did this happen, Jenny? How did you let him do this? He's very convincing, she said, wiping her eyes. He made it all sound so reasonable. He said we should check on the house. Then he said we should stay a few days. Then he said maybe we should redecorate to cheer you up. Every step seemed small. I didn't see the whole picture until you came home and I saw your face. He destroyed your mother's greenhouse. I know. I'm so sorry. When he told me what he was doing, it was already half torn down. I tried to stop him, but he said it was a surprise for you, that you'd be happy to have a gym instead. I wanted to believe him because I loved him and I'm an idiot. You're not an idiot. You're manipulated. There's a difference. She shook her head. I should have known better. Mom would have seen right through him. That hurt because it was true. Sarah had always been a better judge of character than me. She'd vetted every one of Jennifer's high school boyfriends with a combination of gentle questions and mom instinct that somehow revealed exactly who they were. She would have taken one look at Blake Carter and sent him packing. We can't change it now, I said, but I need to know. Are you still with him? Jennifer looked at me like I'd lost my mind. After what he just did? After what he said to me? God, no. I'm done. I'm so done. She started crying again. I'm so sorry, Dad. About Grandma. About Blake. About Mom's greenhouse. About all of it. I finally moved to hug her. We'll figure it out. How? He destroyed everything. Not everything. You're still here. We stood there for a while, and I let her cry. When she finally pulled away, she asked, What happens now? Now I call a locksmith. Then I document everything for the police report. Then tomorrow, I file a restraining order and look into pressing charges. Can I help? Yeah, I said. You can help me go through the garage and find your mother's garden tools. Whatever Blake didn't throw away, we're going to save. We spent the next hour going through my garage. Jennifer had saved more than she'd let on the hand trowels Sarah loved, her gardening gloves, the sun hat with the embroidered butterflies. Each item we found felt like a small victory. A locksmith came at midnight and charged me double for the emergency call, but I didn't care. New locks, new keys, mine. The next morning, I drove to the courthouse and filed for a restraining order. The clerk was a woman in her 50s who took one look at my face and asked if I was okay. I must have looked as rough as I felt. Just lost my mother, I said. Then came home to some trouble. I'm sorry for your loss, she said, and actually seemed to mean it. The restraining order was granted that afternoon. Blake had to stay at least 300 meters from my property. The criminal charges for property destruction would take longer, but the prosecutor I spoke with seemed confident. You've got photos of the greenhouse before and after? She asked. Years of them. My wife's garden was her pride and joy. Good. And witness statements from neighbors? My neighbor Jim watched the whole thing happen. He thought I'd hired Blake to do renovations. He'd be happy to testify. She nodded. We can probably get him on criminal mischief at minimum. The lock situation might qualify as attempted theft by taking possession. Depends how hard he pushes the squatter's rights angle. He really thought that would work? You'd be surprised. People watch too much TV, think they know the law. She paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry this happened, especially with everything else you're dealing with. Over the next few weeks, I fell into a routine. Mornings, I'd stand in the backyard and look at the concrete slab where Sarah's greenhouse had been. Then I'd have coffee and plan. I called contractors for quotes. I called a lawyer about the criminal case. I called the garden center, where Sarah used to buy her orchids, and asked if they still had any from her favorite cultivar. They did. The owner remembered her. Sarah Morrison, right? Always came in on Saturday mornings. I'm so sorry for your loss. She was a lovely person. She was, I agreed. I'm trying to rebuild her greenhouse. Start over. Well, the owner said kindly, orchids are patient. They'll wait for you. Jennifer came by most days. She'd moved back into her old apartment, the one she'd been subletting before Blake convinced her they should save money by staying at my place temporarily. She helped me sort through the photos of the greenhouse, organizing them chronologically. Mom really loved those purple orchids, she said one afternoon, looking at a picture from 5 years ago. Phalaenopsis. Those were her favorites. Do you think we can grow them again, after you rebuild? I don't know. They were finicky, even for your mother. But we can try. She smiled a little. She always said the trying was the point, not whether they lived or died. She did say that, didn't she? We sat together in comfortable silence, the kind you can only have with someone who shares your grief. The preliminary hearing for Blake's case was set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, he'd been harassing Jennifer through text messages. She showed me some of them. "You really chose your dad's old shed over us? Hope you're happy. You ruined everything. I could have made you so happy. Now you're stuck in your dead mom's shadow." That last one made my hands shake. Jennifer had gone pale reading it. "He's escalating," I said. "You need to document all of these and report them to the police. He's just angry. He'll calm down." "Jenny, look at me. This is not normal anger. This is someone who doesn't understand boundaries. You need to take this seriously." She nodded slowly. "You're right. I'll call the officer who took the report." The police added harassment charges to Blake's growing list of legal troubles. His lawyer called mine, suggesting we could all work this out reasonably. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen, laughed. "He destroyed a dead woman's memorial garden. There's no working that out." "He's offering to pay for the greenhouse rebuild," the other lawyer said. "With what money?" Patricia asked. "Your client is unemployed and living in his parents' basement. Our client is a retired contractor who can do the math on what he owes. Spoiler alert, it's more than your client has." I was sitting in Patricia's office when she put the call on speaker. Hearing Blake's lawyer squirm was deeply satisfying. "My client maintains this was all a misunderstanding," the other lawyer tried. "Your client tried to claim squatter's rights on a house he'd been in for 10 days. Your client destroyed property he had no right to touch. Your client harassed the homeowner's daughter with threatening messages. Which part is the misunderstanding?" After the call ended, Patricia turned to me. "He's going to take a plea deal. Probably plead to criminal mischief, pay restitution, maybe some probation. The Crown doesn't want to waste court time on this." "What about jail time? For a first offender on property damage?" "Unlikely. But he'll have a record, and he'll owe you money for a long time." It wasn't justice. Not really. But it was something. I started rebuilding the greenhouse in October, 2 months after I'd come home to find it gone. The weather was turning cold, frost in the mornings, but I wanted the structure up before snow fell. I could work on the interior through winter. Jim, from next door, came by to help. He was 73 and had known Sarah for years. "I should have stopped him," he said, as we measured foundation posts. "I saw what he was doing and I just assumed you'd hired him. I should have called you. You didn't know. I didn't even know, and I should have." Sarah would have spotted that boy for a fraud in 10 seconds. That's what Jenny said. "How's she doing?" "Better. Angry at herself mostly. Angry she didn't see it coming." Jim hammered in a steak and looked up at me. "You know what Sarah would say about that?" "What?" "That's how these people work. They find the good ones and take advantage. Nothing to be ashamed of. Being good." I had to stop working for a minute, because my eyes were burning, and Jim had somehow nailed exactly what Sarah would have said. We worked through October and into November. Jennifer came by on weekends to help. She wasn't handy like her mother had been, but she was determined. She held boards steady while I sawed. She painted window frames white like the original greenhouse. She helped me mix the special soil blend Sarah had always used. The orchids came from the garden center in December, carefully wrapped against the cold. I'd special ordered 3 phalaenopsis plants from the same cultivar Sarah had loved. The garden center owner, whose name was Margaret, delivered them personally. "These are from my personal collection," she said. "I propagated them from plants your wife bought years ago." I always meant to tell her, but then she trailed off. "Thank you," I managed. "This means more than you know." Margaret showed Jennifer and me how to care for them properly. The temperature requirements, the watering schedule, the light needs. It was overwhelming, but Jennifer took notes like she was studying for an exam. "Mom made it look so easy," she said after Margaret left. "Your mother killed plenty of plants before she figured it out. She just never mentioned the failures." "Really? Really?" She had a whole corner of the yard she called her plant cemetery. Buried all her mistakes there. Jennifer laughed. The first real laugh I'd heard from her in months. "Where?" I showed her the spot, now overgrown with wild grass. We stood there together as the winter sun set early, the greenhouse glowing behind us with its new grow lights. "I can't believe Mom never told me about her plant cemetery. She was embarrassed, wanted you to think she was a natural." She was a natural. At everything. No, I said. She worked hard at everything. Made it look natural. There's a difference. Jennifer thought about that. Blake made everything look easy too. Made me think I was the problem when things got hard. You weren't the problem. You were just with the wrong person. How do you know when someone's the right person? I thought about Sarah. About how we'd met at a hardware store when we were both 24, arguing about which drill bit was better. About how she'd laughed at my stubbornness, and I'd loved her laugh immediately. About building this house together, and raising Jennifer, and facing her diagnosis, and all the ordinary moments in between. I think, I said slowly, the right person makes you want to be better, but loves you even when you're not. They see your plant cemetery and don't judge you. They hold your hand in the hospital and never let go. Jennifer was crying again, but the good kind. I miss her so much. Me too, sweetheart. Every single day. We went inside as the temperature dropped. I made us hot chocolate the way Sarah used to, with real cocoa and a splash of vanilla. We sat in the kitchen. I'd bought back a recliner, similar to my old one. Comfortable and worn in, and didn't talk much. Sometimes grief doesn't need words. The court case concluded in January. Blake pled guilty to criminal mischief and harassment. He was sentenced to 2 years probation and ordered to pay $8,400 in restitution for the greenhouse and related damages. His lawyer had argued the amount was excessive. Patricia had itemized every single board, every pane of glass, every plant, and the judge had agreed with her completely. Restitution paid at $150 per month, the judge said. If you're late once, I'll consider jail time. Do you understand? Blake, looking smaller and older than I remembered, had nodded. He hadn't looked at me once during the hearing. Afterward, in the courthouse hallway, Patricia shook my hand. That's about as good as these things get. Will he actually pay? The probation officer will make sure he does. Or he goes to jail. Good. Jennifer had come to the hearing but stayed in the back. When it was over, she walked up to me slowly. Is it wrong that I feel sorry for him? No, I said. It means you're a good person. Just don't let that sorry feeling make you forget what he did. I won't. I promise. We walked out of the courthouse together into cold January sun. The greenhouse was finished now, full of growing things and warm light. Sarah's orchids were thriving. I'd planted the rose bush again, in the same spot, with fresh soil and hope. Want to come see the greenhouse? I asked Jennifer. Check on those orchids? Yeah, she said. I'd like that. We drove back to my house, our house, really. The house Sarah and I had built and filled with love. The house Jennifer had grown up in. Blake's trendy furniture was gone. I'd sold it and used the money for the rose bush and some new garden tools. The family photos were back on the mantel. Sarah's crocheted blanket was draped over the couch. In the greenhouse, the orchids bloomed purple and perfect. Jennifer watered them carefully, the way Margaret had taught her. I checked the temperature gauge and adjusted the humidity. We worked in comfortable silence, the way Sarah and I used to. Dad, Jennifer said after a while. Yeah? Thank you for not giving up. On the house, on the greenhouse, on me. You're my daughter. I could never give up on you. Even when I'm an idiot? Especially then. She smiled. And for just a moment, she looked exactly like her mother. Outside, the Calgary winter was brutal and cold. But in the greenhouse, surrounded by growing things and the memory of a woman we both loved, it felt like spring. Like hope. Like the kind of legacy that matters. Not a house or a garden, but the love that built them and the people who carry that love forward. I thought about Blake sometimes, about how he'd seen my grief as an opportunity, how he'd looked at my empty house and my trusting daughter and thought he'd found an easy mark. How wrong he'd been. You can't steal a home. Not really, because a home isn't about locks or deeds or who's sleeping there tonight. A home is built with years of love and work and the kind of care that notices when an orchid needs water. It's built with the patience to rebuild when things are destroyed. It's built with the wisdom to know that the people who matter will stand beside you, and the ones who don't will show themselves eventually. Blake got probation and a payment plan. I got my house back. But more than that, I got to watch my daughter find her strength. Got to see her stand in her mother's greenhouse and learn to nurture living things. Got to teach her that sometimes the most important thing you can do is refuse to let cruel people win. The first orchid bloomed in February, a purple so deep it was almost black. Jennifer called me at 6 in the morning, breathless with excitement. "Dad, the orchid, it bloomed!" I could hear Sarah's voice in my head. The trying was always the point, but I'd be lying if I said the blooming didn't matter too. The blooming mattered very much. I drove over to see it. This perfect flower that had survived Blake's destruction and a Canadian winter. Jennifer was standing in the greenhouse, tears on her face, smiling at this small miracle. "Mom would be so proud," she said. "She would," I agreed. "Of the orchid, but mostly of you." Later, I'd hang a small plaque in the greenhouse. Just a simple wooden sign with Sarah's name and the dates she'd been alive. Below that, a quote she'd loved. "The work you do while you procrastinate is probably the work you should be doing for the rest of your life." Sarah had found that line in a book once and laughed for an hour. Then she'd gone outside and spent the rest of the day in her greenhouse, happy and purposeful. That's what I wanted people to remember. Not the cancer, not the loss, just the happiness and the purpose and the purple orchids that refused to quit blooming. Standing there with Jennifer in February, cold seeping through the greenhouse door but warmth inside, watching her photograph the orchid from 17 different angles, I felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years. Peace. Not the absence of grief that would always be there, like furniture in a familiar room, but peace with it. Peace with the way things had turned out. Peace with the knowledge that I'd fought for what mattered and won. Blake had tried to take my home. Instead, he'd reminded me what a home actually was. And in the strangest way, I was almost grateful for that. Almost, but not quite enough to forgive him. Some things you don't forgive. You just learn to carry them and keep moving forward. The orchid bloomed for 6 weeks. Then another one bloomed. Then the third. The greenhouse filled with purple flowers and the scent of growth. And every morning I'd stand in the doorway with my coffee and remember Sarah standing in that exact spot, dirt under her fingernails, happy. That's how you win against people like Blake. Not by beating them at their own game, but by refusing to play it at all. By building something beautiful in spite of them. By being exactly who you are, and loving exactly what you love, and not apologizing for either. My mother's funeral was in March. A small service, with her friends from the care home and a few cousins I hadn't seen in years. I scattered her ashes in the Fraser River like she'd wanted, watching them disappear into the gray water. Jennifer came with me for that trip. We stayed at my mother's apartment for 3 days, packing up her life. It was heavy work, saying goodbye to someone twice, once when they die, once when you pack away their things. "Do you think it ever gets easier?" Jennifer asked, holding one of my mother's ugly sweaters. "Losing people?" "No," I said honestly. "But you get better at carrying it." Does that sound depressing to you? A little. But it's also true. We donated most of my mother's things, kept a few pieces of jewelry, some photos, a quilt she'd made when I was a kid. On the drive back to Calgary, Jennifer slept in the passenger seat while I navigated the long highway through the mountains. I thought about my mother holding me when my father died, about Sarah holding me when my mother's dementia got bad, about holding Jennifer while she cried over Blake, about how love is mostly just showing up and holding someone while the world breaks around them. The greenhouse was waiting when we got home. Jennifer had left the grow lights on, and it glowed like a beacon. We unpacked the truck in silence, both exhausted, and I made us dinner from whatever was in the fridge. "Dad?" Jennifer said, over reheated pasta. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you think Mom would have liked who I am now? After everything?" I looked at my daughter, 29 years old, heartbroken and healing, stronger than she knew. "Your mother loved you from the moment you existed. Nothing that happened would change that. Not Blake, not any of it. But I made such a mess. We all make messes. Your mom certainly did." "Like what?" I smiled. "Ask me sometime about the year she decided to go back to school. The amount of chaos that woman could create with 3 credit cards and a community college catalog was impressive." Jennifer laughed. "Really? Really?" She signed up for 7 classes. Made it through 2 weeks before having a complete breakdown in our kitchen. I came home to find her crying into a statistics textbook. What did you do? I held her while she cried. Then we figured out which classes she actually wanted and which ones she'd signed up for because she thought she should want them. She dropped 4 classes, aced the other 3, and never looked back. I didn't know that story. She didn't like to talk about her messes. None of us do. But that doesn't mean they didn't happen. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. I think I'm going to be okay. I know you are. How do you know? Because you're Sarah Morrison's daughter. And Sarah Morrison didn't raise quitters. That got a real smile. No, she didn't. We finished dinner and did the dishes together. Outside, the Calgary winter was finally starting to break. Soon it would be spring again. Soon the greenhouse would need new plants. Soon Jennifer would probably meet someone new, someone better than Blake, someone who saw her worth. But that was all later. For now, we stood in the kitchen of the house I'd defended and won back, washing dishes and talking about nothing important. And it was enough, more than enough. It was home.